Aloha and welcome to this second Immortalite podcast. Today we'll be doing a reaction video to the documentary Living to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zone. This is a longevity documentary currently trending on Netflix and it is fantastic. Please check it out if you haven't already. If you're on Twitter or you're on TikTok, we can only post 2-minute videos, so please follow us on Facebook or also on YouTube so you can see this full podcast. If you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so because we post tons of videos every day and we want to make sure everyone sees them. Before we kick this off, I want to begin with a quote from Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. So with that being said, enjoy.
Immortalite.
All right. This Live to 100 documentary is in 4 parts, about 35 minutes each, and the 4th video is the best in the series, so it's definitely worth making it to the end. The host of this documentary is Dan Buettner. He discovered 5 places in the world dubbed Blue Zones, where people live the longest, healthiest lives. He first visited and researched these places many years ago, and he now returns to continue telling their stories for the world at large. I really just want to give this man a hug and say thank you. I can also relate to Dan as I've been on a similar journey over the past decade or so, unknowingly gathering info about longevity and regeneration during my film travels. As a filmmaker by trade who accidentally stumbled upon profound longevity secrets by visiting Egypt, the Amazon, China, and Hawaii, all this is covered in our very first podcast. Those discoveries led to the creation of Immortalite, a Hawaii-based longevity company. We recently set a world record in longevity for fastest epigenetic, or otherwise called biological, age reduction. We have online courses that dive deeper into these Blue Zone groups, as we've studied them ourselves, and this reaction video is an opportunity to bring more awareness to longevity and to share more insights that were overlooked in this documentary. As a filmmaker, however, I'm not here to nitpick anything. We thought this was a tremendous documentary and very much needed today. We have nothing but praise for what's being shown and shared. It was really, really awesome. One of the major issues facing longevity is actually cognitive dissonance. When information is presented to people that conflicts with their beliefs or assumptions, they often firmly reject this information rather than looking deeper into it. It's like they hit a mental wall. For example, we've heard anecdotal stories of people living to 120 or even 140 in remote parts of Pakistan. These people are called the Hunza people. These people are not included in the Blue Zones, yet they are showing astonishing numbers. But these numbers are so high that people often dismiss them, saying there must be something wrong with their birth records or something else, which could be, but you can clearly see here this is how dissonance works. That's impossible. Or is it? The great thing about this longevity documentary, Live to 100, is that it seems within people's grasp. Many of us probably have someone in our families that's lived this long, or very close to it. Living to 100 doesn't seem beyond the realm of possibility. 140, on the other hand, seems ridiculous. Yet, there are sharks like the Greenland shark that live to 500, and we know why that is. We are entering a very amazing time for humanity, where we will be living dramatically longer lives, both naturally and artificially, depending on one's choice. But our first point of contention with this documentary is that what we see in these world's Blue Zones is largely because of their dietary choices. I really want to make this clear, how important diet is. This documentary focuses primarily on other aspects of longevity, which are equally important. And this is no mistake. People are very reluctant to change their diet unless they absolutely need to. And I've personally seen people that would rather die than change their diet. Diet is a very strong part of a person's identity. And it is for this reason I believe that this documentary focuses on other aspects that people may be more open to changing. Things like adding walking groups and creating more supportive communities is showing an increase in people's lives in Middle America. This is fantastic. But with these things, we're talking about maybe adding 7 years to people's lives, which, to be honest, is huge. And you have to start somewhere. But the future of longevity is looking at possibly doubling the current life expectancy in the West, which is somewhere around 76 at the moment, and it's actually been declining for the past 3 years. So, for all of you all listening today, we here at Immortalite commend you for wanting more. Not only more insights, but to live longer and better quality years than what the current life average expectancy is. To reach higher levels, people will need to take action rather than take what they are currently being given. This documentary is a fantastic introduction to places in the world where people have been often isolated at times and have had to become self-sustaining. And for any viewer who has never heard of a blue zone before, this documentary is a fantastic introduction. It's chock full of insights, and we're going to share and get into some of them here. So, spoilers ahead, if you haven't watched this documentary, it's definitely worth checking it out first. You'll enjoy it. It's really well made, and the visuals and people you meet along the journey are awesome. We here at Immortalite obviously want to go further, beyond 100, which is most of what we'll be talking about here shortly, but just getting people aware of longevity is massive. So let's get into this. First off, there are 5 recognized blue zones: Okinawa, Japan; Sardinia, Italy; Nicoya, Costa Rica; Loma Linda, USA; and Ikaria, Greece. There are other remote places on Earth that have very old living peoples as well, like the Hunzas in Pakistan, claiming life expectancy of 120, and people I've met living in the mountains of Guizhou, China, also living very, very long lifespans. But this documentary takes us to these 5 specific places and looks at common ground between these people. You'll notice that the majority of these places eat a lot more vegetables than in the West, or in the US specifically. But each of these areas do eat meat. The meat is not really spoken about in this documentary, but you'll see legs of some animals on tables in Ikaria, probably goat, and even in Okinawa they eat small amounts of fish or pork. The focus here, however, is on the plants, and the reality is that all of these centenarian places eat much less meat. They eat much more plants and carbs. They eat very little meat in comparison to the US. A small amount, maybe a few times a month. It's also how they prepare these carbs and plants that is allowing them to reach 100. And there are a lot of dietary insights which are entirely missed in this documentary if you want to go beyond 100. The biggest one of these is the lack of attention given to any sprouted or fermented foods. We have a lot of these listed in our Unconditionally Giving Foods ebook. In fact, from our research in the blue zones, they all incorporate fermented foods in their diet. Also, as you can see in this documentary, all of the people are making home-cooked meals in their kitchens from scratch. They are too remote to buy store-bought ingredients. They are literally living off the land, and that means everything is fresh, organic, and natural. They aren't using preservatives, there aren't chemicals, or any added things for shelf life or flavor. They make it fresh in the kitchen, and it looks delicious. We'd love to try it. So, back to the fermented foods. Each of these areas eat a type of fermented food, often every day. In Okinawa, this documentary mentions the tofu which is made there, but it does not mention the fermented soybeans called natto. Natto is a fermented food and a powerhouse when eaten fresh. This is adding to their lifespans in Okinawa. The documentary also mentions in Ikaria how they use fresh honey in their tea. The documentary recognizes that the honey is raw honey and not pasteurized like store-bought honey. Even if you see something in the store labeled raw, you've got to know that that's pasteurized if it's on a shelf. And that means that these things in Ikaria that are not pasteurized are still bioactive. They talk about this in the documentary. Raw honey. Moments later, however, they should have recognized the same to be true for the wine, but he doesn't make the connection here. Yes, their wine is made more naturally, like they've done for 100 generations, but it's not pasteurized either. It is also bioactive, just like the honey. In fact, everything that is bioactive will allow you to live longer. That's a massive insight that they've completely overlooked. It's not that the wine is making them live longer, it's that the way that it's homemade in Ikaria and not pasteurized that is keeping it bioactive. Bioactive things make people live longer. But for wine lovers, maybe this will get them on the bandwagon of longevity for the social implications, because we all enjoy spending time together in a friendly setting, and for most of us that involves alcohol. But overlooking this bioactive point is massive, and we recognize here the tremendous benefit of bioactive foods, or what we call living foods. And so we're going to point out a few more of these blue zone dietary omissions. In Ikaria, beyond the wine, they also enjoy unpasteurized fermented goat's milk with raw honey for breakfast. That's a fermented breakfast. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, they drink fermented corn chicha, which is a type of alcoholic drink, and they eat various pickled vegetable curtidos. Now, this drink is not pasteurized. And pickling is also a type of fermentation, so these vegetables are a wonderful way to be naturally preserved, but also hugely beneficial for the body. And in Sardinia, the people are also enjoying unpasteurized homemade wines like in Ikaria. They do mention a type of sourdough bread that they make there in Sardinia. However, that bread is immediately cooked, so the bioactive component is gone. Even though the bread has been made to be low glycemic, which means that the bread lowers sugar absorption, the bread is then cooked, so it is not as effective as something that is still a living food. Again, the focus of this documentary was not so much on diet, as it was other factors such as traditions and social norms. We'll touch on these other factors briefly here in a moment, but we really want to reiterate that the key factor is in the diet. People eat 3 times a day. What people are eating, therefore, is going to dictate how they are feeling and how well their body regenerates. Yes, it's good to have a community to pick you up and support you on a down day, but your diet can greatly affect not only your health, but your emotional and your mental well-being. Research done on the gut microbiome shows that there's a direct connection between eating and mental well-being. So the diet is allowing these people to feel good well into their 100s. As nice as it is to have a supportive community, if none of them were eating well, then they wouldn't be feeling very well, and they wouldn't be vibrant, and they couldn't be supportive of each other. Another key factor in this documentary is exercise. Exercise is stressed a lot in the West because people need to exercise to lose weight and stay healthy. They are needing to lose this weight because of the types of things they're eating. The West is basically burning the candle at both ends. This documentary clearly shows how these blue zones have integrated exercise naturally into their everyday living, whether that's walking up steps, or walking to the store instead of driving, or doing hand labor like chopping wood, or cutting the grass with a machete, or simply working in the kitchen. They aren't going to the gym, except in Loma Linda, where they actually have basketball teams for when you're like 80 years old. I wonder if there was like an 80-year-old league and a 90-year-old league. Like, are you too old to play in this league or too young? But otherwise, all of the exercise is hidden in these places' everyday activities. For example, in Okinawa, people traditionally sleep on the floor, so they're getting up and down several times a day. This is very different than relaxing in a lazy boy and shuffling back to bed. Sleeping on the floor activates your core muscles, like doing daily sit-ups, and that is keeping people strong. Use it or lose it, they say, and this is very true. There are a lot more of these types of insights sprinkled throughout this documentary. But another crucial thing that is not mentioned at all, that we go into at some length in our masterclass, is genetics. People are very concerned with their genes and often associate their lifespans with how good or maybe how not good their genes are. Dr. Bruce Lipton changed all that a few years ago with his discovery of epigenetics, or above genetics. He demonstrated that there are factors above genes, such as your beliefs and your environment, which determine which genes turn on and which genes turn off in your body. So we are no longer victims of our genetics, but rather our environment and our beliefs shape our biological reality. This means that our genes are not our fate, that we're not on some predetermined course, but you have a choice and a say in determining your future. Just because you have a family history of anything does not mean you cannot make different choices in your life and live much longer and more quality years. This point is crucial for people to understand. You are not a victim of your genes. Lastly, this documentary focuses on two other crucial factors to longevity. They call it Ikigai in Japan, or having a life mission or purpose, a reason to get up every day, and also Moai, or this idea that there's a community that supports you and supports each other as people age. The West has an idea of retirement, but these blue zones just continue on, and they continue to be productive. They do not work as hard as people do in the West, and they often take time out for family and for food, but they do continue to work even once they're 100. They just enjoy what they do, and they keep doing it because they love what they do. Moai is also a necessary concept, and different than nursing homes. Unlike a home where people need to be physically taken care of, people in the blue zones are active well into their later years. But as people pass on, the people regroup together and make sure everyone is taken care of, whether that's family visits every week or even daily, or groups of friends getting together. There is a community that is about friendship and reiterating social norms and having fun and mutual support. This way, everyone is still engaged no matter how old they are, rather than feeling retired. Even the word retired makes you sound like you're done way before you're actually done. These other key factors make up the majority of this documentary, and this documentary does a fantastic job of illustrating how environment is equally important as diet. But we'd still contend here at Immortality that the diet is the primary factor, as people aren't going to be well adjusted in a friendly environment if they are not eating properly, nor will they live that long. Still, for all the reasons we've already illustrated, people are more open to changing their environment than they are open to changing what they're eating. So, if changing their surroundings is the gateway for entry to people, so be it. Everyone needs to start somewhere to see what they're capable of. And the reality is, people are way more capable than they believe themselves to be. You are powerful beyond measure, and many people are afraid of their own success or abilities. As crazy as that sounds, that is a reality. If this wasn't the case, I would think people would have packed up their things and rushed to live in these blue zones years ago. Instead, these blue zones are actually shrinking and vanishing. Okinawa now has the highest rate of obesity in Japan. It's up to people like Dan Buettner, the people working at his Blue Zone project, and the many wonderful things you'll see in part 4 of this documentary series. And that is what's going to keep the torch alive for longevity. The future is bright, however. We have the blueprint for reproducing longevity, and in our case specifically, going past 100. And if you watch our masterclass or take our transformative longevity program, you will learn these secrets to regeneration. But the takeaway for anyone watching this wonderful documentary, Live to 100, is the realization that there is so much more available for people, naturally, if they are willing to take it. There is nothing holding people back from adding 20 to 30 years to their lives. And if we continuously regenerate, as we do here at Immortality, we don't know what our biological limit truly is.